G'day, Ross.
Hey, Jono, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, thank you, my friend. Um, just before we kick off, a
Yep,
reminder to all of our viewers, the Tanakh Tour. We are absolutely and most definitely doing it this November. In fact, we're even kicking off on the 31st of October.
yep.
And we're doing so from Cairo for the very first time.
Wow.
And I know it, right? And that's what everyone said. We're going to Cairo, we're doing Egypt. We absolutely are. The things that we're doing, we're going to Cairo, we're going to Luxor, we're going to Ansuan, we're going on a Nile cruise, we're flying
Hey, hey, hey,
overseas.
hey, right there, just for a minute.
Yeah,
When we first talked about this, and I one of us, I can't remember if it was
this was your
something.
idea. This was
Okay,
your
because I
idea.
couldn't
Mm,
remember, but I think I saw another tour had talked about a Nile cruise, and I said that is so cool.
Got to do
But
it.
I remember thinking, well, is that going to drive the cost out to where we couldn't price it well enough? And as I understand, it's sort of like you're going to be staying either in a nice hotel, which the Tanakh Tour always does,
Mm.
or you're going to be staying in a room on a Nile cruise boat. So
This
it
is,
works out about the
I've
same.
never done that. I've never done. I'm really looking forward to that. Dave and Patty. Hey, Dave just said g'day so to Timothy Thompson, and of course Timothy was with us last year. I
Yep.
can say that now because hey, happy New Year, everybody! Happy 2023. Dave and Patty are going with us to Egypt and Jordan this coming November. Yeah, so a Nile cruise. Then we're flying. I think we're actually flying down to Luxor. The thing about Egypt is that it's massive. Like the thing
Yeah.
about Israel is you could probably drive around the whole country in a day.
Oh, yeah. We've done
Um,
it.
but
Yeah.
we've done it. So everything is, it's you're never looking at more than 2 or 3 hours drive maximum if you're starting from the center. And Egypt, on the other hand, is just massive. I mean, it's not as big as Australia, I guess, but
Yeah.
or maybe the States. I don't know, but there's a lot of ground to cover if you want to really do it justice, and we are covering that ground. We have two internal national flights in Egypt, and as I already mentioned, a Nile cruise, um,
Now wait,
where
just on that, I'm
yeah,
sorry, John, but I know this, and I didn't know you were gonna tell them all this cool stuff, but you told me, just last week that the information has come back from the land operator,
mm,
and they recommended that we include these 2 internal flights,
mm.
and you can tell us more about why that is, but I was surprised. So this doesn't add anything to the tour cost. Uh,
Uh, it
I
does
mean,
to us.
to them, to us
It
it
does
does.
to the back end. To them, no, this is ridiculously cheap. It really is, and it doesn't take very long, to Google search prices for what we're doing to find out that the price that we have set is very, very cheap. And there's a reason why we've done that, Ross. The reason is because this, like I've already mentioned, this is our first trip to Egypt. This is the introductory tour offer, and already we have well past minimum numbers, so we have a viable tour. It is absolutely happening. But I was going to say, yeah, we're flying, but I mean, because well, you know, whether we drive all the way back up from Luxor to Cairo and then back down into the Sinai Peninsula and up to the traditional Mount Sinai with St. Catherine's and so on and so forth, is way
Yeah.
too much driving, few and far between, locations of interest. And then we thought, well, can we cross the Red Sea? Is there a ferry? And that sort
Like
of
the Gulf of Suez, that was the original plan was
that's right, the Gulf of Suez,
I
and then
thought we get off the boat. Sorry to interrupt. I thought
no,
we
you're
get
right.
off the boat down south in Egypt, which is biblically Upper Egypt. It
Mm,
seems opposite, but we'd go down there, get off the because you take this cruise, you get off at cool stops along the way, and then
mm.
you get back on the cruise, and you get off. And when you get off, I thought we would take a ferry or a boat of some sort across the Suez, and then
Now,
then you journey down to traditional Sinai.
that's right. So it's not impossible, but the thing is that even from that point to drive all the way, I guess that's north to up the Sinai Peninsula to the traditional Sinai is an enormous drive,
Yeah.
and to fit everything in that we want to fit in, and to make the most of our time, it just made sense to take some internal flights. So that's what we're doing, and as I mentioned, we do end up at the traditional Sinai. We intend to ascend that
Yeah,
mountain,
baby. We're gonna do
and
that morning hike. I've seen it on documentaries and so forth where you get up in the morning early, early, probably about the time I get up anyway, take some
You do.
coffee, you go up traditional Sinai, and then you come back down, obviously, and then we've got even more in store in Egypt, right? I
Oh,
mean,
it doesn't end there. Yeah, no, but we end up at now as far as the ferry is concerned, we end up at Nuweiba, and we cross the Gulf of Aqaba, and we end up at Aqaba, and then from there into Jordan, Wadi Rum, Petra, and then up to Amman, the museums and Mount Nebo and all of this stuff, Jerash
who
and
would
so on and so
not?
forth.
Let me just ask, who would not be jumping in, and a lot of people have to sign up for this tour. Just
Mm,
you mentioned crossing at Nuweiba. I know that a lot of people favor Jabal al Luz in Saudi Arabia as a traditional site of
mm,
Mount Sinai.
yeah,
Uh, Now, look, I don't think traditional Sinai at St. Catherine's is. I don't think that the Saudi Arabian site is, but it's still oriented towards various theories that have been put forward. Even the crossing at Nuweiba, a lot of people propose that that's where the children of Israel crossed
hmm,
because of some supposed
land
land
bridge.
bridge that's
Yeah.
under the water and, so forth.
Mm,
I've read all those theories. Some of our viewers have as well. But we're crossing from there. We go into Jordan. This is, in a way, retracing various proposals of the wilderness itineraries, which you
mm,
and I and the Tylers and others have studied extensively. So,
mm.
no, I think this is going to be fantastic. Man.
It is an Exodus themed tour. So my point is, dear listeners, if you haven't already signed up and put your deposit down, Christo's here saying he jumped in head first more than once. He's in it. Paddy says good day, and someone on Facebook said hi guys. Now, just a reminder, everyone, this platform doesn't tell us who you are on Facebook. So hello to whoever that is. So. Um, and Dave just said thousands of feet below. I think
He's
he's
talking
referring
about
to
the land
the
bridge,
land. Yeah,
actually.
I don't buy it,
Yeah, it's
but you're right, Dave. Yeah, there is these are traditional sites that we're moving through. It is an Exodus themed tour that we are taking, and whether or not these are the actual locations and sites, we'll be discussing that actually in detail on the tour. But speaking of Exodus themed tour, okay, so the Egypt Jordan tour ends up at near Jerash, and then we cross over into Israel for the Israel tour, second leg of the
right.
tour. And while we're talking about Exodus themes, we are on that tour visiting the only, absolutely intend to visit the only Sinai or Horeb candidate in Israel, which
That's
is
right.
Har Khartoum. So we've worked hard to make that happen. We've never done that before on the Tanakh tour.
Now
So
we've done that together, and some of our viewers have. Obviously, the Tylers, we've been with them. I've
mm,
every time I've
mm,
been, I've gone with them.
the Tyler's
In fact,
Dave made it happen for us. Yeah,
Dave has become the expert at so it now he's not going to do the Israel leg of the tour with us, but who knows? Dave never passed. He's yet to pass a trip to Har
you know you
Khartoum,
want it, Dave. Come
and,
on,
and
you know you
he
want it.
even if he doesn't do the tour, I bet he gets. He'll tell us the name of his tour guide that he always uses. I bet you Dave and Patty are going to be following behind us in that Jeep, going out there.
We'll figure
'Cause they-
something out.
yeah. Uh, Wait, let
So
me.
there's that. So TanakTours.com is on the screen now. TanakTours.com will take you to the website. You can leave a deposit. Get in quick, particularly if you want to do the Egypt Jordan tour. That one is surprisingly filling faster than we thought.
Yeah.
So if you want to be on that one, get your deposit down sooner rather than later. Now, hey, Patty. So last week,
Yep.
we who's this? Someone said looking forward to meeting the Tylers. There you go. Who are you, person? If you're a Facebook user, it's not telling us your name. Uh, we talked about the Siloam inscription
Yeah.
and various other inscriptions apparently that have been found by Professor Galil. We mentioned that there was a great deal of sensationalism, great deal of excitement, and a great deal of frustration, depending on which side of the fence you were sitting. Frustration because all of the details, the
Yeah,
photographs, everything by which peer review would scrutinize these claims has not been made publicly available. It's
right.
frustrating. We all share that frustration. It's also exciting because if these claims are absolutely verifiable and true, then this is one of the greatest, Ross.
Yeah, easy one of the great. That's an understatement. It may be the greatest in terms of connecting archaeology to the biblical text, particularly if Galil and Shukran are right in the reading that they released
Mm,
from the Canaanite tunnel, the Canaanite well,
mm,
tunnel number 4, that inscription we talked a little bit about last week, very specific. It tells us that this waterwork, and I've got more to say on that, this waterwork where the inscription is found right there at the Gihon, that it was built by Hezekiah. And it says very specifically, not only that Hezekiah did it, but it gives the date, the 17th year of his reign in this month on this day. So it's really, really quite incredible. Um, it,
mhm,
I, I mean, time will tell. Now, just so you know, we don't know exactly when they're going to publish a book. Traditionally, the academic method is you submit an idea like this, a discovery through peer-reviewed channels, generally
mm,
an academic journal of some sort, journal of biblical literature, whatever. And then other scholars have an opportunity to counter that and provide evidence for, against, whatever.
mm.
They didn't do that. This is number 3, I think, sensational announcement that Professor
Well, that's right.
Galil has
Yeah.
made on his Facebook page. And
Mm,
he's saying that they're coming out with a book. They've not announced when it's going to be published. He told me privately, with no permission to talk about when that might come out. I would
mm.
say fairly soon, just say that.
Okay.
But if that book, let's say the book comes out and they've got all the photographs, of course, then the scholars are going to
Well and
jump
good.
on it, as
Yeah,
we say, like white on rice.
sure.
But nonetheless, the book's coming out. You can
And
only,
I'm telling you now, if it
yeah,
does not come forth with all of the details necessary, then, there'll be a great
gloves
deal.
are off. Gloves come off then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gloves come off. Alright, so there's that. Now the next question is, has there been, over the past week, any developments in that, number 1? Number 2, I know that you are just neck deep in the 1880s right now on this particular topic.
yeah,
You have a book coming out very, very soon, which is something I'm far more interested. Well, I
yeah.
guess I'm really looking forward to it. When is that going to be out? So just bring us up to speed.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. Here's the thing that I wanted to say leading into this. What are the chances? Now, some might say this is just circumstantial, it's coincidence, whatever.
Mm,
But several months ago, I shifted my entire focus to Siloam. I mentioned the Siloam Tunnel and Shapira's involvement in that in the Moses Scroll. I'll talk about that. We
mhm,
we have a
mhm,
reference by Claude Condor,
mhm,
who is the great soldier scholar of the 19th century, member of the Palestine Exploration Fund. He gives a hat tip to Shapira that says Shapira offers an interpretation to the meaning of the inscription. Now, by the way, he's the first to offer an interpretation. I'm just going to blow through this quickly
mm,
because it's in the book, number one. But anyway, so I already had the connection between Shapira and the Siloam inscription. And that, in fact, is how Guta and Shapira met. So I was working on another book. I've read books, so many books over the years, and quite often an author will say in the preface or the introduction, I didn't intend to write this book. It led me down this path. And I thought, come on, man, I believe them now
right.
because my focus shifted to Siloam. And I remember telling you and Daniel Wright and the Tylers and Tabor, I'm writing the book on Siloam. It's
Mm,
all about this inscription. Well, that was interesting to me, but I thought, I mean, it's the book I want to write. Now, while I'm working on it, Jono, this is what blows me away. I put in and was accepted to give this lecture at the Albright on Schick, and so I'm making that talk about the Siloam inscription. That doesn't have to be anything other than my purpose, and what I'm working on happened to align with what this university
Mm.
and so forth put out as a call for papers. But while I'm doing that, then all of this information comes out, these sensational claims by Galil and Shukran.
Mm.
And it's all about Siloam.
Timing. Right.
So the timing is really incredible.
It is.
So
Yeah.
what I've decided, when I did the Moses scroll, I researched for about a year to a year and a half. And people that have read the book know that it's quite detailed in footnotes. And I
Mm.
trace through the the blow by blow, as the story unfolds. Well, that's what I'm doing with the Siloam inscription. Well, what I find even more uncanny, so it took me about a year to a year and a half of research, and I wrote the book in about 5 or 6 months.
Mhm.
I now have given myself the goal of producing this is my tentative date. I want to come out by July with this new book on Siloam.
You're gonna publish, so Horror Press will publish this in July is your intention.
That's my intent, and I
Grand.
really
Alright.
feel that I can do it, but I mean, I'm working. You mentioned it's no joke when people call me, I need them to understand I am literally in 1880. So when Bridget calls or whatever, and I have to go break to go to the hardware store or whatever, grocery store, I need her to say, "Ross, it's 2023. You understand? I need you to go to the
Right.
grocery store." Okay. But I really feel like, so what are the chances again? Now, I want to include in my book the biblical storyline behind the Siloam inscription. If there is a connection, you have to wait and
Mhm.
see.
Mhm.
But I also want to include any archaeological discoveries that are talked about. And it just so happens that all of this is going to be incorporated into the story. I hope. I hope they've
Mhm.
published by then. If not, I'll just put it in the back. Watch for this. Galil and Shukran have made the following claim. But anyway, in the meantime, here's what really interests me about Galil's claim.
Mhm.
There is the inscription that is supposedly, they've claimed, is at the Gihon Spring, and it it ties to Hezekiah. And so what a lot of people are automatically doing is saying there is an inscription in the Siloam tunnel network. But again, I want to differentiate, because the tunnel that goes, where you when you and I went through, where you
Mm.
step into the water flowing and you go from that point to the exit at the Siloam
The
pool,
pool. Mm.
that tunnel, the question that I have right now in bringing us up to today is that tunnel the tunnel that Hezekiah built?
Mm.
Now, let me just make one more statement on that, and you can jump in anytime. I know we've got comments. We'll catch up in a minute. But here's one question, and Daniel Wright, I've bothered him with this until he's
G'day,
probably,
Daniel.
yeah.
He has tuned in, by the way. He's there.
So, what we know from the biblical account, Isaiah 22, 2 Kings 22, 2 Chronicles 32,
Mm.
is that Hezekiah is anticipating the attack of the Assyrians, and the way the things are on the ground at the time, we're talking 8th century BCE, Assyria's coming, and the main water source, the Gihon, is outside the
Outside the wall.
protected gate. So the story, as people typically derive it from the limited information in the biblical text and their interpretation based on the discovery in 1880 of the Siloam tunnel and the inscription, they make all of that one story. And here's what
Mm.
I mean. The Assyrians are coming, Jono. Oh no. Well, let's dig a 1,709-foot tunnel through the rock. Somebody at the time, you would think, would have said, excuse me, sir, please don't kill me, but could we just maybe get it inside the gate. Like, go west 45, 50 feet,
Mm.
100 feet, 200 feet,
Do we
300.
do we really need to chisel our way through solid rock?
Do we have
Um,
to chisel through a mountain and then go west 40 feet and then go south 1700? Or wait, here's another idea. The Assyrians are coming. How about we just build a huge wall?
Wall around
We
the
got,
Gihon Spring.
we got plenty of rocks, don't we?
Mm,
And if
mm.
somebody said, no, I'd rather you dig a 1700-foot tunnel. I'm
So
not.
so this is something
Yeah.
really interesting because you brought this to my attention, and I'd never really given it that much thought before because, as you pointed out, there is only very limited information that we're given in the Tanakh in regards to, uh, Hezekiah doing something about the water, expecting a siege from the Assyrians and so on and so forth. Um, if that was the measure taken, why is it so labor intensive? This is something that would have taken many years to complete. Um, there, as you are pointing out, there are easier solutions. So, is this actually what happened, or is this some form of revisionism, or is this? What are some of the thoughts that go through your head?
Well, one of the big ones is scholars have leaped to conclusions. Let me
Mm,
say right now that the tunnel, which I'm calling tunnel number 4, from the time you step into the water's flowing, you step in, it's up to my knees, it's up to your ankles. You step into the water, you then walk through the winding passageway with a candle or a light, 1,709 point some odd feet. Um, that tunnel section,
mm,
I'm calling tunnel 4, it actually was built in by Judean workmen. The question is, was it built in the time of Hezekiah? Was it built any other time? Because the 6 lines on the Siloam inscription mention no king. They don't
mm,
say, and thus King Hezekiah. Now, some might propose that the name is no longer visible on that. Now, let me make clear what I think Galil is suggesting is that the discovery, which is not in that main tunnel that I'm talking about, it's at the Gihon Spring. Now, the interesting thing to me is that if the Assyrians are coming, Jono, and Hezekiah says, get this water source in the city. And they said, well, how far do you need it? I just need it in the city. The Assyrians are coming. So you tunnel west. That's what that's what happens. In
mm,
other words, you can follow from the Siloam, from the Gihon, west into this, and you get this initial part of the network of tunnels. The reason I'm saying network of tunnels, anyone who's been through this realizes that as you go into the city of David, you're going down, 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 around, down, 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 around. You get into the entryway as you're going to the main tunnel where the inscription is found. That's tunnels too.
mm,
Now, there is a scholar by the name of Shlomo Gill
mm,
who wrote a very interesting paper. I read it a year and a half ago. I reread it this week. And one of his proposals is that this network of underground tunneling and water carrying system was built over a period of years, and different generations
mm,
added to it, added to it, added to it. I'm tending to lean that way in my research. Again, let's give the benefit at the moment and say Galil is right. He's found an inscription that will pass all the litmus tests and prove to be an authentic 8th century BCE inscription that tells us all sorts of things about Hezekiah. The location of that inscription does not mean that the main tunnel that brings it down to the Pool of Siloam was an 8th century BCE
sure.
project. You get what
Mm,
I'm saying?
yep.
In fact, I won't say what Gill says because I don't want to give all that away yet. It's very complicated. It's hard to
Okay.
explain without photos and so forth. But again, if it's authentic, if it goes to the 8th century BCE, if it's tied to Hezekiah and can be proven by an ancient inscription, all well and good.
Hmm.
What I'm focused on is the actual inscription. Okay, Daniel Wright says correct. They had time to get the tunnel west into the city wall. They wouldn't have likely had time to finish the other 1,600 feet of tunnel in time to head off the Assyrian
Mm.
invasion.
Yeah, that seems fairly obvious. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's one of the main puzzles. Now, a lot of people who are fundamentalists might say, "Hey, wait a minute. You're trying to detract from the veracity of the bill." No, I'm not. I'm saying Hezekiah clearly was involved in a major project that brought water into the city prior to
Mm.
the Assyrian invasion, just like the text says. In fact, in Second Chronicles 32, it indicates that one of the things that takes place, in fact, the project of Hezekiah is that he makes a tunnel to the west.
Hmm.
That's all it says, Jono. It doesn't say, oh, and then he turned south and went
All the
1,700
way down
feet.
to the pool. Yeah.
Anyway, all of this is my preliminary research, but here's something that is challenging for me, having not seen what Galil and Shukran are coming out with. I'm not suggesting they're wrong. I haven't seen it. I want to give the benefit. I want to, just like other scholars have said, let's wait and see the evidence, weigh the evidence, and then make a call.
Mm.
But here's my initial thought. If it was only an inscription outside the door by the Gihon Spring Tunnel that said Hezekiah, that'd be one thing. But as I understand, based on the Facebook post and things like that, Galil is saying that he has more evidence suggesting Hezekiah's work in the tunnel, which leads from what was called in the 19th century Mary's Spring or Miriam's Spring, which is the Gihon,
Right.
and or the outlet of the Gihon inside the gate is called Mary Spring, and then the exit point at the Pool of Siloam. Now, by the way, just this last week, the IAA announced that they are going to fully excavate the Siloam pool.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's right.
That's
So
another thing going on with
that
Siloam.
it blows my mind that that has never been done before. Are we seriously? It's happening in 2023. It has not been excavated before.
Well, I tell you, I'm in 1880, and I'll tell you this: Herman Gutta, the Tylers, as many of our viewers know, they were helping with all the research when I was working on Shapira stuff initially in 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021. Tabor, the Tylers, and Daniel Wright in particular, along with you. Well, they helped to publish this Gutta work, and so I
Mm.
got really into Gutta. What I find is that Gutta is the man. I mean, when you want details and accurate, I mean, he is so careful in his academic work. He's in 1880. Now, the
Mm.
scroll, Shapira scroll, when it really hit the papers in England and all, 1883. Back it up 3 years, Jonah. We're in
Mhm.
1880. In 1880, on March 23rd, Gutta arrives to Israel, to Jerusalem, and he takes over the mission of getting a good impression of the Siloam inscription
Right.
from Conrad Schick. Now, Conrad Schick is already working with another guy, a friend of his, he's been friends with for 24 years by the name of Moses Shapira. The
Mhm.
two, Conrad Schick and Shapira, I've discovered all this. I'm working on it now. They're working together. They're getting copies. They're standing in the tunnel with lamps and candles, and they're working on this. March 23rd, 1881. I may have said 1881. Gutta, Gutta arrives. He makes a handoff with Schick because by this point, no one knows what it means. Remember,
Mm,
it's discovered in June of 1880.
mhm,
Schick is very ill. He's got a lot of jobs to do, but he's sick mainly, and he needs to get permission from the municipality, the Ottomans, to do work there because he doesn't want to do work there and with them looking over his shoulder and what are
mm,
you doing, you know? So
mm,
he has to coordinate things. Um, and so they make a handoff, but nobody knows what it means until May of 1881. Condor arrives in Jerusalem. Schick has been working on it. Shapira's been working on it, and Goethe together. When Condor shows up, Shapira says, I know what it means. This is a record, it's a monument description of a tunnel that was built by workers working from both ends. Now, no one at this point had offered any interpretation. They could only recognize a few letters and words, but they hadn't put it together yet. Shapira's the guy. He breaks the code. So I'm going to fast forward through all that. We know now after the 19th century, the guys, mainly Goethe, gets a good transcription of it. No one has made any improvements as to what it says, but there's
mm,
no mention of Hezekiah. Now these guys are in there day after day after day,
mm.
working, cleaning, working, looking. They're actually looking at it. Here's what I understand back to Galil. As I understand, what Galil says is that on the actual Salome inscription, which was chiseled from the wall in 1890, ended up in Istanbul, Constantinople at the time. Uh, he's saying, if I'm not mistaken, that there are parts of the inscription that no one else has seen. On
It's
on
a
the
huge thing to say, though, is it not? It is a massive thing to say. What that suggests to me, Ross, is that that which Goethe, Shapira, Schick, Condor were looking at
and Archibald
was
Stacey and
Stacey,
Neubauer.
everybody for
Yeah,
hours on end, for days, days and days and days, for years, in fact. That what they were looking at was perhaps easily legible. Like once you hold a couple of candles to it, you can say, "Oh, there's clearly this area of the rock has been smoothed out, and there's been inscriptions here, and we can see the letter forms."
yeah.
And and what I have to imagine, Ross, is that underneath that, if Galil is correct, there is additional writing which is not as clear. Um, in fact, perhaps so unclear that it somehow
Escape
uh,
notice.
escaped notice
Yeah,
from people scrutinizing this very area.
yeah.
Now, in his defense, if we say this, we're to understand that the tunnel was full of rubble, and we have rubble and we have water moving through the tunnel, and perhaps there has been some erosion. Can we say
That's
that?
that
Maybe.
is that is the claim.
That is
The
the claim.
claim now let me say to your point, sorry, but, back up to the other inscription at the Gihon.
Mm,
It was noticed in 1911 that there is a frame and
mm,
a prepared surface at the Gihon, a frame and a prepared surface. People looked at that when it was first noticed in 1911. This is after the 1880 discovery in the main tunnel, etc. But they
mm.
looked at it and they said, "Look, we found this frame and with a prepared surface for an inscription, but there's no inscription
No
there."
writing.
What
Mm,
Galil says now, I'm talking about the one at the Gihon. He
right.
says, "Oh, but there is an inscription which has not been detected to this point." Maybe he's right. I hope he's right. That's going to be
Mm,
incredible. But
mm.
again, it means that everyone who's looked at it from the discovery in 1911
Didn't
until
see what
now,
he saw.
but again, maybe look,
Maybe.
Galil is a good scholar. From what
Mm,
I can tell, he is not only a good scholar, he's an excellent scholar. he's trained in these ancient scripts. Hey, but again, so that now it's framed with a prepared surface. Now go back in the tunnel with me, what typically is referred to as Hezekiah's tunnel
Mm.
from the Gihon down through to Siloam Pool, running north to south along a wavy trek. The tunnel, the inscription known as the Siloam inscription was discovered roughly 25 feet from the southern entrance, from
Mhm.
the poolside entrance, southern side on the eastern wall. That's where the inscription was discovered. It is on a tablet on a prepared surface, similar to, but not identical in size or anything, to the one found at the other end, the north end near the Gihon Spring.
Mhm.
And that prepared tablet, which no one thought was an inscribed tablet, Galil is saying he and Shukran found the inscription there. So the southern tablet, the Siloam inscription tablet, here's what we do know. And I'm telling you, I'm reading, by golly, everything on
Everything.
this. The tablet, the area of the tablet is about 2 foot by 2 inches square. Okay.
Mhm.
And so, but the inscription itself doesn't take up the whole tablet. In fact, the inscription, as we know it today, and as every brilliant scholar has seen it before, is on the lower part of that tablet, which made the people in the 19th century after the discovery go, why is all this empty
Mm.
space here?
Mm.
Right? And they looked and they looked and believe me, they looked and they looked and they cleaned it with hydrochloric acid
Mhm. Mhm.
mixture. They made a squeeze of it. They made drawings and sketches and
Sure.
nothing. No one saw anything on the upper half. What Galil is proposing is that you missed it. And this inscription, which was chiseled from the wall and sent to Constantinople,
Mm.
modern day Istanbul, it was chiseled out, but it was in a frame. As I understand Galil and Shukran, below that frame is another inscription which is worn through the ages
Mm.
by water, and it was not observed. Could be, Jono, could
So
be.
yeah, so, Daniel writes, "Perhaps it was covered by the gravel, but, right at the floor of the lion at the time, under the water and under the mud. And maybe that's why they missed it. It was
Could
serving
be.
as the floor."
It could be, and we do know that the inscription itself was the bottom when it was discovered in 1880. The
Mm.
water level was over the bottom portion of the tablet, right?
Mm.
So you got the
Mm.
tablet, it was closer to the floor, to Daniel's point, because of fill and sand and mud. And
Mm.
in fact, Schick was the one who began the work of cleaning out the tunnel. And then over time, we've gotten that further and further down. When you read, now the tunnel was not discovered in 1880, the tunnel was rediscovered in 1838.
Mhm.
And we have record of Robinson and Warren and Wilson and all those guys going through it. Even in the 19th century, the latter part of the 19th century,
Mm.
from 1880, people tried to go through it again prior to and during Schick's work to clean it out. And they describe harrowing trips trying to make it through. The water was not regulated from all the fill and the rocks and the
That was like my trip, Ross. My
oh, it
trip
was,
through there
yeah, it
was
was like,
harrowing.
but it was worse than you had it, because there were places in that tunnel, particularly in the middle, where a perfect size human like me would have be able to crawl through. But God help you if the water from the spring, because
Uh,
it rose and
mhm.
fell. Well, when it's cleaned out, like it was when it was originally built, whenever that was, and modern day, so people don't have to be scared about going through with me now, because the water doesn't fluctuate that much, because the channel has been streamlined so that the flow is constant.
Mm.
So the floor now has it graded on
Yeah.
a point 0.6 or whatever. It's like engineering super. You couldn't do it today hardly,
Yeah.
or you certainly could do it today, but you couldn't do it then. But anyway, so I say all that to say, not only that, so if you're looking at the Siloam inscription in the tunnel,
Mm.
people are going to get their feel of this when they read my book because it's going to be fun. It's so fun
Well,
researching.
I tell you what, just hold that thought before you tell us. They better get your book because it's going to come out in July, and you have ample time to read it before November if you're coming on the tour. And g'day to Jeffrey who tuned in on YouTube here so that we can see who he is instead of
All right. All right.
Facebook. Facebook doesn't identify people. He and his wife Julie are coming on. It is Julie, right, Jeff? I'm pretty sure.
Yep, that's right.
Jeffrey Arnold, and on both tours. They're going to be there. You guys are going to be going through Hezekiah's Tunnel with Ross, and so people, especially if you're coming on the tour, get this book as it comes out in July. Have ample time to read all about it and to be experts on the topic, and then you're going to be able to go through the tunnel and scrutinize the walls with torches and so on and so forth as you go through. Ross, make your point.
Yeah, it's funny because when I went through on our tour, I went through
Mm,
on Tabor's tour and led a group, and then I went through on the Tanakh tour with a group. And I was already, because this is all I've been doing for a year, is researching this tunnel. And I'm not gonna, I'll probably will on the next tour bore people the whole way through, telling them every little detail. Okay, this is a false cut. It was made by this time, and people are going to get their full class, an hour-long class as we walk through.
mhm,
But when I was walking through with my high-powered flashlight, I was not closely, but I'm looking at the wall thinking, wouldn't it be something? Now, this is before Galil and Shukran announced they found these new inscriptions.
mm,
I'm thinking, this is a big tunnel. What are the chances? Maybe somebody missed an inscription.
mm,
But in my mind, I dismissed it. You know why? Because I've read Schick, Condor, Gutta, all of these guys saying we carefully walked through. Condor himself went through on November the 10th and November the 22nd, taking more than 4 hours looking at
mm.
every single. You could walk through that thing in 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's been
Right?
140 years, Ross. I mean, it's been,
Well,
combed through by
well,
experts for this long. Go ahead.
but I remember thinking, man, what if I found one? So I posted a picture. Now, I get back from Israel right before Thanksgiving, family's over, we're doing the family get together and all, and I'm a little bit tired and jet lagged, and I'm thinking about Siloam, even though I've closed the books, put everything back on the shelf, and we're just having good family time. The announcement comes out about the time, either right before or right after I changed my cover photo on Facebook to me looking at the Siloam inscription, the
Mm, mm,
the replica of the Siloam
sure.
inscription. So let me say this. From the southern entrance, as I pointed out, it's about 25 feet in the southern entrance on the east side
Mhm,
is the actual location where the original Siloam inscription was.
mm,
About 2 to 3 feet to the north of that, as you see where the Siloam inscription was, the
mhm,
carved out place is evident there. You
yeah,
move forward 2.5, 3 feet, and there's the replica.
mm,
My picture shows me pointing at the Paleo Hebrew on the
on the
replica.
replica. Mm,
Galil, Professor Galil, is friends of mine on Facebook. He messages me on Facebook Messenger and he says, "Nice photo, Ross. Look closely. Look closely at what? About this
can he
time."
just circle something on the photo and send it back to you? Must everything be difficult from the can this guy give you some specifics?
Well,
Come on.
he's saying it's right there. So I write him back. What do you mean? And what he is suggesting is that behind the
The replica.
replica,
Mm,
it's covered by the replica now, but if you were to pry that off the wall with a crowbar
mm.
and get Professor Galil in there with you and Ellie Shukran from the IAA, they'd go, "Yep, there it is. Look, Ross." But evidently, they say that there are letter forms visible there. Now, here's what that would mean. I'm not saying it's not true. I've got some high quality photos, but I, I didn't see anything. But that doesn't mean they're not there. But that area of the wall of the tunnel,
Mm,
as far as I could tell, is well, let me just say it plainly. It's rough. It's not prepared. Now, could it be that at one point it was smoother, more smooth, more finished, and there were then letters etched into a more smooth surface, which over 2,700 years have been affected by erosion or
it's not usually the way erosion works. Erosion tends to smooth things out over time rather than make them more rough. And I'm trying to understand what Galil's saying to you because he's not saying he has X-ray vision and he can see through the replica to letter forms underneath. Surely he's saying that he sees letter forms protruding.
he does.
Uh,
That's what he's saying. I'm sorry. That's
right.
what he's saying. It's like Daniel Wright and I have had a lot of conversations about this. And when I first told him about, we're talking about this, and he's saying, so that means that someone comes in and he's just being silly, but somebody comes in with liquid nail, doop, 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 puts it right over the inscription and
Yep.
thunk, and
Yep.
puts the replica on top of an ancient, authentic inscription.
It's certainly a possibility.
Now, the other thing that got Galil's attention is that, let's see how to put this. I want to remember what I'm not supposed to say. The other thing that got his attention is,
You've got top secret information, Ross. This is driving me
well, it's,
mad.
it's not that he's confided in me. He certainly
Yeah.
hasn't, but I'm just trying to, think through the way to put
Sure.
it. But,
Go ahead.
oh, I know what I was going to say about getting his attention. I sidetracked myself thinking of something else. Is that whenever I posted a comment on my photograph,
Mm,
I wrote also after I heard about Galil's claim that I'm reading in the 19th century uh, documents. And
mm,
Goethe put something out in 1890, 1891, and he's reporting to the German Palestine Association membership in their journal that the Siloam inscription has been carved out from the wall, right?
mm,
And he said at the same time, a false inscription was also discovered. Now, I wrote on my Facebook post, could it be that what now is being heralded as a new discovery was identified in the 19th century by these guys who are in the hole in the tunnel with candles as a forgery? Let me explain. Let's say you're Goethe and Schick and Shapira. You go in there every day and you're
mm.
constantly looking at inscription, looking above. Is there nope, nothing? And you go, hey, wait a minute. Hey, Goethe, come check this out. Look at this. Somebody wrote, they would know, see, in the 19th
Because
century,
something suddenly appears. Sure.
something suddenly appears. Well, he wrote me, Professor Galil wrote me, and he said, that's interesting about the false inscription. But he said, but what Goethe's talking about, see, Galil knows all this stuff.
Mm.
What Goethe's talking about was removed. Somebody chiseled it out and went to sell it on the black market and said, "Hey, we found an inscription. It was right above the other." And Galil's point is the inscription I'm talking about is in there now. So, one more thing, just to make sure people understand. Professor Galil and Eli Shukran are saying that not that they found one inscription, but five inscriptions. And their book, I don't remember the exact title. I don't know exactly when it's coming out. That depends on their publisher, I'm sure. But what
Mhm.
they're suggesting is that five inscriptions in the what I'm calling the network of underground water system at Siloam.
Mm.
So they're not all in that main tunnel. Some are up by the Canaanite pool. But I know, at least from conversation back and forth with Professor Galil, I guess he's counting the inscription that he sees right there at the
Right, so
location.
that'd be one of them, sure.
Yep.
Okay.
At least
I
one.
I
Yeah.
just all right, so I mean, if the idea is to get everyone to buy the book, well done, because I'm
Oh, I'm
gonna be
fine.
buying the book.
Yeah.
Da Daniel Wright, for the 3rd time, said head in hands. I
Yeah.
understand. So just to quickly, catch up here, Dave says he's gonna get a helicopter to Har Khartoum, so
Yeah.
traveling in style. We'll meet you there, Dave. And so, g'day to everyone who's like the comments have been coming in real quick. Haven't been able to keep up with them all, but g'day to Catherine and to Pam and everyone that's tuning in and commenting. This is great stuff. Can we? Did you want to make a final comment in regards to that, Ross, or can we quickly jump onto something else I wanted to just touch on and
Okay.
not go into
All right.
into
Let,
too
let,
deeply?
let's jump, because let me just say, people can keep up with what I'm doing. I'm going in February. I'll just
Mm,
close with this on the Siloam thing. I'm going in February
with Dave and Patty.
with
Mm.
Dave and Patty. Also, Ralph and Becky, our friends, are also
Hey,
going
there you go,
on
Ralphie.
Vanderham. So we're going to
Yep.
go. I'm going to do the lecture at Albright the 6th and the 7th.
Mm,
And then we're going to take a quick trip. Can't give too many details, but we are going to Jordan for some research. And
mhm.
I hope to catch people up on a little bit of that when the timing is right. But I will say we're going to do that. And then I'll be out for 2 weeks in February. But people who listen to the Shabbat class don't have to worry, because Dr. James Tabor is covering for me
Hey,
the
there you
first
go.
two Saturday mornings on United Israel. Okay, I'm ready to
Excellent.
jump.
All right, now speaking of United Israel and your Saturday morning classes, you are now up to. Have you just published episode 6? This is
I
class
think so.
6.
I think I did
I think
six.
it was 6. It was really good. Again, hey Maria, how you going? And so uh, what I am saying is that it's still not too much that you can't binge it in a
Yep.
week, dear listeners. If you haven't caught up with this series on Jeremiah that Ross is doing, then you can absolutely rip through it in a week and then and catch up, and it's well worth doing so. Now, the classes that you've been doing have been just absolutely fascinating, and a discussion has begun on the United Israel Facebook group.
Right.
It's an interesting discussion that we don't have time to get into now, but I wonder if we might have time to get into it next week. I bring it up because it seems to resonate with a lot of people, and I think it's had something like 160 odd comments.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a discussion revolving around the fact that a lot of us have moved from studied our way out of with analytical thinking, say Christianity, to perhaps Judaism or a form of Judaism, whether Noahide or Karaite Judaism or whatever that might be,
Hmm.
and then applying that same sort of analytical thinking, that critical thinking, to the claims of that expression of the Hebrew
Sure.
Bible, and then finding similar problems therein, contradictions and so on and so forth. By which they start to think, hang on a minute, I thought I had arrived. Now, we talked about this
We
to some
did.
extent
Yep.
a few weeks ago when in a program entitled Why We're No Longer Fundamentalists.
Yep.
There is somebody, I won't mention the names because I think it's a private group.
It
It's
is.
not
Yeah.
not a
Yeah,
secret group. It's
kinda
a
just
private group.
right.
So I won't mention the names at this point. But someone brought up the topic of is now this is going to sound crazy, but is God an alien? Perhaps and while that may sound absolutely nutty to begin with, this is a concept that is centuries old and developed into a theory called panspermia. And it's actually kind of interesting. It's not what I
I've never heard of
believe, but it's something worth
it.
braining, if you like. And again, it seems to not that particular theory, but the idea that we just it seems to be the idea that we can't really grasp, and a lot of people are seemingly throwing in the towel of trying to grasp um, or anchor to a particular text or something like that. It's very interesting. I'd love to be able to talk about it. Do you want to mention anything in regards to this
Yeah,
thread?
yeah, let me add to that. The 100 and however many comments that have come following this initial post, and the post said
Mm,
more than that. The post was, I started in fundamental Christianity and I studied my way out. I
mm,
moved into Judaism and I studied my way out. I did this and so ultimately what this person is saying is I feel like, I'm a little bit uneasy and these are my words, not this person's,
mm,
but the point was I now I don't know what I believe, and
mm,
believe me, Jono, with the current direction, what I'm teaching, there are people who are in that uncomfortable zone again. They were there before with fundamentalism and Christianity, and what they did, this is what we talked about on the other show you mentioned, is they I did let me use me. I was a fundamentalist evangelical Christian, if you will. And by studying the text carefully, not to make fun, but just carefully, critically, analytically looking at the text, I began to say, well, it says that here, but it says this here. Well, I began with this idea that every word is inspired by God, meaning that it is accurate in every sense. That if you
mm.
look at the
Inerrant.
original language, particularly with the Hebrew Bible, there's
Mm,
this idea of Bible codes that the text of the Pentateuch is so divinely organized and crafted that you can track with a computer and find all sorts of secret messages because every letter these fundamentalists would say it comes from God through Moses' hand, etc.
mm,
Well, the view of inerrancy that was in Christianity, a lot of people, when they found that that didn't hold water, they said, out with that. Now I'm going to go be a Noahide Jew, Karaite, whatever. In fact, on this particular thread, some people would say, look, I was nervous there too, but now I'm one of the Samaritans. I found my truth in Samaritan.
mm.
So people are
Yeah, I saw that one.
constantly, but you're moving, moving, moving. We have another group who also are commenting that say, "See, that's the problem with this, Ross." Yeah, they don't not a lot of them don't call me out personally, but the hint is there, baby. It's leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Why
Mm,
look? What's going to be left? I've had people challenge me openly in a discussion and they go, "Why would you tell somebody that?" Well, here are my options. Here are our options.
mm,
I love the Bible. It's what
mm,
I do every day, many
mhm,
days, 16 or more hours. I mean that long. So you got a couple of options. When you realize that you have contradictions, however you want to put it, you can come up with a better word if you like,
mm,
but you find that it's not as sold. You were told it was the holy, inspired, inerrant, authoritative, no error, whatever. When you find that that doesn't hold water, what do you do? Now, one option is don't tell anybody. Now,
mm,
some of the rabbis came up with that solution. They said, the one who knows doesn't say. Well,
mm,
that's one option, but guess what? Guess who it's not an option for? Me. So
mm,
I've had people write me and say, Ross, you changed. No, I didn't. Let me tell you why. My goal all along is truth.
mm. That's right.
You keep digging, Give you a quick example. I know we've got to wrap up, but I'll tell you this. If you read Kings and Chronicles, Second Chronicles 23, 24, 22, 23, and you read Second Chronicles 34, 35, we're talking about the days of Jeremiah, the
Mm,
days of Josiah. In both Kings and Chronicles, particularly Second Chronicles, it says that during the reign of Josiah, that everyone recovenanted with God. Everyone, Jono, everyone. And the whole people followed the law for the whole reign of Josiah. Well, I'm currently reading Jeremiah, who was a prophet for 19 years of Josiah's reign, which according to Kings and Chronicles, excuse me, is what perfect everybody's doing right.
mm,
Jeremiah doesn't know anything about everybody doing right, and neither does God, according to the text of
mm,
Jeremiah and Zephaniah, the
yep,
two prophets at the time. Now, we can either say that Jeremiah and God, according to the book of Jeremiah, he's hearing the Lord spoken to me saying that Jeremiah and God don't know about the revival, that there
mhm,
really was one, or we can say, you know, I kind of think that there's a little bit of political spin going on
yep,
in Kings and
yes,
Chronicles, and the word from the White House is everything's fine, the
yes,
economy's good. And you're like, but
yeah.
it doesn't feel good because my gas prices are high. But it really is good. You just have to believe us. Well, that happened now, but it
Yep,
happened then.
it happened then as well, political spin, absolutely.
Now,
How
some
much of that
people,
so the question
yeah,
is how much of that appears in the text, in the accounts of what actually happened? Because when you compare it with the prophet of the day, the 2 don't gel.
yeah. So I've got
Mhm,
some interesting things. Now, I want to be very respectful of where people are. I do know, and I do have empathy because I've been there, and
mm,
I constantly keep myself there. Let me put it that way. Whenever I look at these things and I discuss, but I'm not pulling references from Josephus and Rambam and who knows. I'm pulling it from the Bible. I'm not
yeah.
twisting things. I'm not tricking people. I don't have anything up my sleeve except my bracelet, which, by the way, this bracelet has the entire Bible on a microchip. I'm
There you
told. I haven't checked it, but I hope to. But I'm not tricking people. I'm reading the text
Mm,
and I am being a literalist.
mm,
I'm saying, this is what it says here. Does it say the same here? Same thing I did comparing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
mm,
Now, that doesn't mean, and what I hope I can convey to people is just because someone told you how to approach these texts, don't be mad when you approach these texts carefully and critically, and you find that what your preacher or your rabbi, your priest told you doesn't hold water. Now,
mm,
one option is to say, I don't care what the Bible says. I'm going to go with what the Rambam says, or I'm going to go with what uh, Isaac Luria, or I'm going to go with what brother, pastor, prophet so and so says.
mhm,
That's their option. But my reading the text carefully and analytically and teaching the Bible, I don't want people to lose their faith. Jono, my faith is stronger than it has ever been because I'm on a quest. I want to know, I want to take the text of the Bible and understand it. And I
mhm,
want to go every chance I get to the Holy Land and take that text and say, it says it happened here. Oh, look, there it is, or there it isn't.
mm.
I know I kind of rambled a minute, but
No, that's
this
fine.
comment is, I respect that comment because
Oh,
most
absolutely.
people most
Yeah.
people who are associated with me, with you, with United Israel, we're seekers,
Mm,
and I think about the story of the call of Abraham. He's considered by the three main monotheistic religions of the day to be the father of the faithful, as I think the Christian writings call him. But that point is brought out in a way in the Hebrew Bible, the Christian New Testament, and even the Quran.
Hmm.
So half the world's population, roughly 4 some odd billion people, look to Abraham. The story of Abraham is very interesting because he's told by God, leave everything you're familiar with, Jono, Abram, and go to a place that I'll show you.
Mm.
Now, if Abram was a modern day fundamentalist, he would have said, God, El Shaddai, I hear you, but I'm going to need to know where we're going with this. I need to know if the theology in that new place matches the theology that I'm at now. I want to
Mm.
make sure that I don't have to give anything up. This is what some of these people, they're not intending to say it, but I hear, I get, and unfortunately, I'm not doing a very good job of keeping up with correspondence right now. I promise I'm trying, but people will often say, you've changed. I didn't sign up for this, because people don't like discomfort. You can say something to that too, can't you?
Yeah, and again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with a program called "Why We're No Longer Fundamentalists." It's a matter of um, throwing the baby out with the bathwater and identifying the baby. As you said, when you come out of Christianity, you're like, well, there goes the bathwater, and the baby is the Tanakh. And then you spend a little bit of time there, and you apply your newfound skills of analyzing and critiquing to the Tanakh, and you go, okay, so maybe the baby is in the Torah. And then you
Yeah.
spend some time there, and as you and I have over the past couple of years, we've gone, you know what, the baby is actually the Moses scroll, and a lot of people are coming along to that. Now, one thing that that is very obvious, and this is not a criticism in any way, but many of the comments clearly are from people who have not kept up to date or read the book just over your shoulder on the Moses scroll.
Or
And
even
I would
listen to my classes. I
or
can
listen to
tell.
the classes, listen to the, and this is not a
Yeah,
criticism because people don't.
yeah.
I
They
understand
don't
people,
have
that,
to. I'm just saying they
but
haven't.
I would absolutely suggest to people in that thread that have not invested some time into looking at whether, because this document absolutely claims to be the baby,
Mhm.
and you and I certainly believe that it is. There is that. So maybe we can talk to that a little bit more next week because we've run out of time. The other thing, of course, is yeah, Jeffrey, yeah, panspermia. So it was popularized. I think was it
I've
15 years ago?
never
Ben
heard.
Stein. You never heard of that? So Ben
Yeah.
Stein released that documentary called "Expelled: No Intelligence Allowed," and it was a documentary championing at least the right of the theory of intelligent design, um, um, which seems to have been eradicated entirely from any scientific thought, and he wanted to challenge that, and the pinnacle of that particular documentary, the crescendo, if you like, was he interviewing Richard Dawkins and saying to him, "So you don't believe in God? You don't?" And Dawkins is like, "No, I don't. What is this? Come on, I don't believe." He said, do you think that perhaps we were seeded, that our planet was seeded by an extraterrestrial being with the technology that was able to transport life from A to B?" And he said, "Yeah, of course, that's an absolute possibility." And that was kind of like a gotcha moment that made that documentary very popular. And that is the theory of panspermia. um, it's not so much of a gotcha moment, and this is one of the thoughts that is entertained in this thread, which we can touch on very briefly next week. But it does kick the can down the road. You still have to come to the conclusion of, or the discussion of, well, who created that being? Where did that come from? Where did these seeds come from? Where did
This is
these life
way,
forms?
way deep. This is way deep for me, but I
Is it?
understand that. But I tell you, mainly because the textual nature of things, just to make this point clear, and I know you know this, and most people
Mm,
who know me know this, I'm not espousing any far out ideas. I'm totally focused on the text. And let me just say, I read a quote. I wish I knew who said it, but I even
mm,
looked at the time I first saw it. I don't want to ever come across as not caring that people are struggling with this, because I really do. Let me just say this, like, I've heard Ben Shapiro and stuff. They've said things like facts don't care about your feelings, and I
That's just
wouldn't.
me.
I know that's
No,
you, but I
that's
wouldn't say that to a
you're not
person.
like that. You're
But
very gentle.
I did see this quote one time, and it said, "A ship in a harbor is safe,"
Mhm,
and that's true.
mhm,
But that's not what ships are built for.
mm.
Ships are built to endure the ravages of sea. Ships are made to bring you safely from one point to the next, to
Right.
transport you to a new location, even if the waters get rough.
Mhm,
And what I would say, the reason I bring that up is because um, I almost want to say this as delicately as I can, but at the same point, I want to say, you, people who watch and study and seek God and study the biblical text, you've got what it takes. You've been made in
mm,
such a way to endure the seas. And what I would say further is, while I'm thinking along these same lines, is, when we get into this material, what is yet to come in these classes will be even rougher. It's almost, how can I say this in a gentle way? You ain't seen nothing yet.
mm,
Now, again, I can promise you that my love for the Bible and my desire for truth overrides everything else. And so I want to bring people safely from one point to the next. I would encourage people, don't give up. Don't give
mm.
up. If Kings and Chronicles are written by the establishment of the day to say, everything's fine here. The economy's going well. Our worship with God is right. The temple is reinstated. We've got the Ark of the Covenant. It's sitting in here in the temple. The priests are performing the sacrificial cult as intended. And then you go, Jeremiah? And he goes, um,
All in
no.
trouble. Yeah.
But wait a
All
minute.
in
But
trouble.
it says in the book of Chronicles, Jeremiah, according to
No,
the court
go
record
go
from
look at
the.
Shiloh.
Yeah,
Go look at
it
Shiloh.
says, let me tell you, you see this beautiful building? Not one stone's going to be left on another. And it's going to come down. If you go look at Shiloh, it's going to look just like that. And then they go, we're going to kill you, man. We're going to put you in prison because we've got prophets. What do our prophets say? Everything's going well. The king said it, and I agree. Everything's going well. Jeremiah, he's lying. No,
Yeah,
but he said he's so I want to bring these inconsistencies up. And guess who I'm going to side with? I'm going to side with
with
God.
Jeremiah.
Now,
Mhm,
if in the course of our Jeremiah study, hint, hint, and we find a prophecy written in the third person, supposedly attributed to Jeremiah, that is not fulfilled,
mm.
that the timing has already passed for its fulfillment, I'm going to bring it up. And I'm going to tell you this was not Jeremiah. Look, this is fun stuff. Who would not want to be part of this? Saturday
We
mornings, 10:30.
gotta do it. Okay, Saturday morning, and, episode 7 coming to you. Thank you for all of the comments. You guys, so many great comments, and we don't have time to read them all because we've run out of time. I I really wanna talk about this some more. There's so
I
much in there,
know,
so
I know.
we have to touch on it, next week. Now, you also have, before I disappear, there's a video that's about to be released of an interview with you. I saw something that you posted
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
Facebook.
I'm doing a live interview at 1 p.m. Let me pull that up real quick, Jono,
Mhm,
before we go off. Let's see. And I will post that because I'm going to be interviewed by Gnostic
mm,
Informant, and that is Neil Sinlak.
mm.
And he is going to do a live interview with me. Let me see if I can get the link
So
quickly.
this is something that hasn't been pre-recorded. It's yet you're gonna do a live interview, okay.
Yeah, here it is right here. And let me
Mhm.
post this link. Again, Sunday, this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time.
Okay.
2 p.m. on the East Coast. This is it. And if people go there, it's
1
called
PM? What, are you gonna make me
We,
get up in the middle of the night to watch this?
we Need to Talk About This Jerusalem Underground Inscription. So
Alright.
Neil Sinlak, and he's got, a following, and he wants to bring this to his viewers. So, hey, It's about the underground at Siloam. I think I can do a live interview on that. Look, everybody, please join me Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Central Time. Join me
Sunday.
Sunday, 1 p.m. Join Jono and I next week, same time, Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central. And boys and girls, don't forget TanakTours.com. You need to sign up soon if you're going to
Get
go
your
with us.
deposits down because it's filling really, really fast. If you want to go, you got to get in early because space is running out, particularly on the Egypt Jordan tour. And we would love to see you. TanakTours.com. We have to go. We've run out of time. You guys, thank you for all the comments. We'll be reading through those later, and we'll see you next week.
Have a beautiful day.